All right, so what we got for you guys today is the original plans for the Incredible Hulk 2 in the franchise. The Hulk has always been like he's one of my favorite superheroes, but he's not like he's probably like maybe my third if I had to like guess. I should do a tier list on my favorite superheroes, but Spider-Man is fucking top 10 to be honest with you. The very first Hulk movie, I remember it like vividly. I think that's the right word. I just remember like the dog scene a lot, and I think he fights Absorbing Man. I don't remember a whole lot of the movie. I remember the second Hulk movie, which The Incredible Hulk. That one was tight where he fights Abomination. But we're gonna get into this. This is the original plans for The Incredible Hulk 2, and we're gonna react to it.
Both Ang Lee's Hulk and Edward Norton's The Incredible Hulk fell short with critics and disappointed at the box office, canceling plans for sequels to both films. The follow-up to Ang Lee's film would have introduced the Grey Hulk, Abomination, and the Leader, while the sequel to Norton's movie was set to feature the Red Hulk.
Which I remember when The Incredible Hulk, like the Incredible Hulk, like the second one or whatever you want to call it, because they're both called one's called Hulk, then there's The Incredible Hulk. So The Incredible Hulk, I remember when Abomination turns into Abomination and then he hits the dude and then like his head starts doing weird shit. When I was little, I thought he was gonna be Doubleheader until I was like, wait a minute, he's the Leader. Like that's the name of the villain. And then it was cool how like they still used the same actor in Captain America Brave New World, and he is still the Leader. I don't like his design. I think he like just looks kind of weird, and I think they tried to go for a like realistic looking version of him. But dog, it's Marvel and superheroes. Like, give him his big ass forehead. That's what we want.
However, you may be surprised to learn that there was a Hulk film in the late 90s that almost starred Johnny Depp that came very close to being made before also being canceled. So let's dive in and find out what happened behind the scenes on all three movies, and also take a look at what could have been the Hulk from the 90s, Ang Lee's Hulk 2, and Edward Norton's The Incredible Hulk 2. In the early 90s, Terminator and Aliens producer Gale Ann Hurd optioned the Hulk movie rights from Marvel before setting up the project at Universal Studios. As a fan of character-based movies, Hurd was drawn to making a Hulk film because she felt it was less a superhero story and more of a character piece about a man struggling with a dual identity. To write it, Hurd and Stan Lee had...
I mean, kinda. Because you get to see, like, how Bruce Banner, like, he has, like, the... like, I'm a monster thought. So, like, it does, like, kind of cripple him, but, I mean, I don't know. I think Peter Parker still has a harder life.
First-time screenwriter John Turman, who impressed the pair with his comic book knowledge, and his take on the movie was heavily influenced by Tales to Astonish, which pitted the Hulk against General Ross in the military. Turman wanted to set the film at a military installation, and saw the movie as a Jekyll and Hyde at Los Alamos. And while he pushed to incorporate Hulk's father as the source of Bruce's pain and anger, the studio rejected the idea. Turman worked on the script for nearly 2 years, turning in an insane 10 drafts, with none of them apparently satisfying Universal. This led producer Gale Ann Hurd to hire her husband, Jonathan Hensley, to take over after the Rocketeer's Joe Johnson was brought on board to direct, as the two men had just worked on Jumanji together, and Universal hoped to recapture that film's success. However, several of Turman's ideas would eventually end up in the finished film. Before we get there though, Hensley would completely rewrite Turman's script, and his version of the film was not only radically different, but came very close to being made. It would have opened with Dr. Bruce Banner and his co-lead, Dr. Molly Mickelson, performing experiments with gamma radiation and DNA splicing, hoping to give humans the ability to survive the intense living conditions on Mars, which is being funded by a billionaire determined to establish colonies on the Red Planet. To test the research, 3 convicts are chosen from death row, and are each gene spliced with different insects, before being exposed to gamma radiation. Of course, when one of the convicts attempts to escape, the experiment goes awry, as Banner is caught in the gamma rays with the 3 convicts. Afterwards, the convicts manage to escape, as they begin slowly mutating into insects. Desperate for a cure, they kidnap Dr. Molly Mickelson's son, who they hold hostage in exchange for an antidote.
One thing I never like understand with like villains like that, like why don't you just ask? I mean, ask first, and then if he's not gonna do it, then like maybe go to that point. Like if you're a villain, but why can't you just like be like, hey dude, could you like fix me? Like I don't know, just hot take.
As Bruce pursues them, he discovers his new abilities as the Hulk, while he himself is pursued by government agents. The film ends with the convicts getting the cure, which not only doesn't work, but makes their conditions worse, turning them into giant monsters. And while Hulk is able to defeat 2 of them, the third nearly kills him, until Hulk takes the same defective antidote, making him grow 12 feet tall, as he becomes a Super Hulk. Eventually, Hulk defeats the final convict, who dies, and then receives an improved antidote that transforms him back into Bruce Banner and cures him of being the Hulk. Finally, in a mid-credits sequence, Howard Stern is interviewing eyewitnesses, who claim the monsters were aliens from Mars. So what went wrong? Director Joe Johnston would drop out of the project in favor of directing October Sky, leaving screenwriter Jonathan Hansley to convince Universal to let him direct the film as his feature film directorial debut. Special effects wizard Steve Johnson, the man responsible for designing Slimer, was hired to bring the Hulk and the film's giant villainous insectoids to life. However, due to the limitations of 1990 CGI, the plan was to use men in suits and animatronics for most shots, reserving CGI for wide shots where the Hulk and the insectoids needed to perform actions that couldn't be done practically, similar to Jurassic Park. Like in this shot that features an animatronic T-Rex before it backs out of the frame and then returns as a CGI T-Rex walking towards the other truck.
Yeah, one thing about like Jurassic Park is it's a movie that's like, I don't think it gets enough credit that it should, and it was a movie that was honestly like ahead of its time. Because even when I was little, I'm like, oh my god, this movie has dinosaurs. And think about like bringing dinosaurs to life, like in a movie, and for it to look that good that early on in like time, dude. Jurassic Park was the shit back then.
Johnson and his team got very...
I'm not too into like the newer movies, like Jurassic World. It's kind of like not too into it, I guess. But Jurassic Park was really good.
Far along building some absolutely huge animatronics, even completing the film's 30-foot-tall fully animatronic Super Hulk for the film's climax, as well as developing an inflatable technique to show Banner transforming into the Hulk. And while Greg Sporleder from The Rock and Lynn Red Williams from Mortal Kombat would be cast as two of the convicts, nobody was ever formally cast as the Hulk, although Johnny Depp was reportedly the top choice to star in the film. Unfortunately for all involved, Universal would get cold feet over both the film's ballooning budget, which soared to over $100 million, as well as having a first-time director in Jonathan Hansley helm such an expensive production with zero experience. After spending $20 million, Universal would shut down the film to retool the script and reduce the budget. From here, the script would be rewritten by a number of different writers until Ang Lee would join the project to give it some much-needed direction in the early 2000s, turning down Terminator 3 to make it. And by this time, CGI had advanced far enough that Lee chose to use motion capture to bring the Hulk to life, even performing it himself. To play Bruce Banner, Ang Lee wanted Billy Crudup, who would go on to play Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. CG renderings...
Dude, if y'all haven't watched Watchmen, that is a really good movie. I think personally. I remember I watched it and I was like, this is tight. It's very dark, but really good movie.
Crudup as Hulk were even created before the actor changed his mind and dropped out of the project. He'd be replaced by Eric Bana, who described the shoot as ridiculously serious, with the set being silent and morbid in a lot of ways, as Lee told him that they were making a Greek tragedy. Famed critic Roger Ebert would commend Lee for actually trying to deal with the issues in the story of the Hulk, like his relationship with his father, instead of simply cutting to brainless visual effects, while the split-screen technique Lee used to cinematically mimic comic book panels was met with a mixed response. The problem with Hulk is it came out hot off the heels of Spider-Man, as many fans went in expecting, whether consciously or not, a similar type of movie, but instead they got a glum, abusive father-son story about repressed trauma. Even before Hulk came out, one of the film's screenwriters, James Schamus, called up Ang Lee after seeing Spider-Man and told the director, "I think we're in trouble," feeling that Spider-Man had established the template for the new superhero movie genre, which Hulk deviated from considerably. And while Hulk opened to strong box office numbers, showing that audience interest was there, ticket sales fell off dramatically in this.
Dude, imagine a world where Spider-Man 1 is a terrible movie. Like, imagine, like, what movies come after that. Because, like, to be honest with you, and not even just because Spider-Man's my favorite superhero ever, Spider-Man is what kind of created this whole superhero movie genre. Like, in the aspect of, like, making so many of them. Like, there's been movies like, you know, like Captain America, like the old movies, but we don't talk about those and nobody's watching them. Spider-Man 1 set the bar and it created this whole entire like MCU and everything we got now. I think Spider-Man is like the founding father of all these superhero films that we have gotten. So I just can't imagine like a world where that movie flops and we don't get Spider-Man 2 and 3 doesn't happen and we don't get Amazing Spider-Man. Like, I can't see what happens after that.
Second week due to poor word of mouth. Regardless, Avi Arad and screenwriter James Schamus moved ahead with planning a sequel, and it would have seen Bruce Banner take refuge on a Native American reservation that had been suffering the toxic effects of gamma radiation, which Bruce learns is from illegal radioactive dumping nearby that the government has covered up. Allegedly, Talbot would have returned, having survived his injuries in the previous film, thanks to Samuel Stearns, who, after experimenting on himself, transforms into the leader, giving himself greatly increased mental abilities. Desperate to get revenge on Banner, Talbot volunteers to be the prototype for the military's Gamma Super Soldier program, an experiment conducted by Stearns that transforms Talbot into the Abomination, using DNA from Bruce. Meanwhile, Banner continues to struggle with his inner demons, resulting in the emergence of the self-absorbed and morally ambiguous Grey Hulk, who is intelligent, cunning, and articulate, but not as strong as the Green Hulk, nor fueled by rage. As Bruce's Grey Hulk personality threatens to overtake his body and personality completely, he must fight to bring back the Green Hulk in order to save the reservation from Abomination and the leader. After the mixed reception to Hulk, Marvel Studios reacquired the film rights to the character, while Universal retained the distribution rights. And with the recent launch of the MCU with Iron Man, Marvel felt it best to deviate from Ang Lee's style and reboot the Hulk to make it stylistically closer to the tone of Iron Man. However, they didn't want to retell Banner's origin story, so instead approached the movie, as producer Gale Ann Hurd would say, as kind of a reboot and kind of a sequel. To direct it, Marvel hired the Transporter's Louis Leterrier, who originally wanted to direct Iron Man, but was offered the Incredible Hulk after learning
Dude, what's crazy is I remember going to see Iron Man in theaters. It was like 2008, I think, and I was like really little. So dude, being there for that, like the very beginning of this whole MCU chapter, bro, that's like a crazy feeling. And I like Iron Man 1.
Jon Favreau had already been hired to helm it. As they began casting and nearing the start of production, Leterrier felt the script still needed work, a concern he related to Edward Norton when he asked him to play Banner, resulting in Norton not only agreeing to star in the film, but asking to rewrite the script himself. It's important to note that Norton has a history of pushing his way into rewriting his movies. For example, on American History X, after a positive test screening on the film, the studio and Norton gave director Tony Kaye substantial notes to make changes to the film. When Kaye refused, Norton took over the edit, threatening not to do press on the film if he couldn't recut it, which the studio would acquiesce to, as Norton would increase his role in the film while, according to director Tony Kaye, decrease the integrity of the picture, leading Kaye to try and have his name removed from the movie, while throwing an absolutely legendary temper tantrum. On Red Dragon, Norton would show up to set with new script pages, for not only his character, but for Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter as well. The director of that film, Brett Ratner, would later say that Norton's instinct is to try and take over the film, feeling he has to try and rescue it, calling it both a blessing and a curse. And while Norton rewrote the Incredible Hulk script before production, he continued to rewrite it throughout the film, which allegedly led to clashes between himself, the director, and his fellow actors. When Norton showed up to Comic-Con, he announced that he wrote the script, angering the writer of the first draft of the film, Zach Penn, who the Writers Guild decided to credit the script to, arguing Norton had not dramatically changed it, and mostly just rewrote dialogue, which then angered Norton. Marvel would eventually cut 70 minutes of footage from the movie that gave the other characters more depth, clearer motivations, and audiences a better idea of Bruce's struggles. For example, the film's original opening, which is referenced in The Avengers, when Mark Ruffalo's Banner admits he put a bullet in his mouth and the other guy spit it out, showed Banner in the Arctic doing exactly that. However, this scene was removed because flashback sequences depicting Banner's origin that were placed throughout the film were poorly received by test audiences, leading them to be moved to the start of the film to play together over the opening credits in place of Banner's attempted suicide. Upset, Norton would go on to pull the same stunt he did on American History X, and threatened not to promote the film if Marvel didn't put the scenes back in. However, Marvel refused, as they wanted the movie to come in under 2 hours, and also got cold feet about having a character-driven film exploring Banner's personal trauma, following the negative response to Ang Lee's Hulk, which did the same. When it was time to make The Avengers, Marvel decided to part ways with Norton. Marvel's Kevin Feige later released a statement explaining the recasting, stressing that the decision had nothing to do with money, as he criticized Norton by emphasizing the need for finding an actor who better fit with the collaborative nature and creative spirit of the...
How do you guys feel about that whole... Low-key, that does make sense, though. He was just really difficult to, like, work with. And he was always, like, a pain, so then they just got somebody else, and we haven't seen the actual Hulk. Like, we've seen him with, try to fight Thanos and Avengers 1, but We haven't got to see too much of what he can actually do.
The rest of the cast. However, before Norton was replaced, director Louis Leterrier was planning a sequel. In fact, he even wanted the Hulk to be the villain in the Avengers, which is why he left the ending to his film somewhat ambiguous, so that if Marvel wanted to go in that direction, the last shot of his film with Banner opening his eyes and smirking could be interpreted as Banner not being able to control the Hulk, but the Avengers will have to team up to stop. But if Marvel chose not to go in that direction, then his plan was to interpret the ending as Banner smiling because he's finally able to control the Hulk, which would be explored in the sequel.
Smart.
Norton, before he was replaced, envisioned the Hulk as a story to be told over multiple films, with the second one being about the Hulk as a conscious dreamer, a guy who can handle the trip. Similar to Ang Lee's Hulk 2, Leterrier's sequel would have featured the leader as one of the villains, who was set up in the first film when he gets some of Banner's blood in a cut on his forehead, as well as the Grey Hulk. The film also would have featured multiple Red Hulks led by General Ross. Unfortunately, while the film did decently at the box office, it wasn't a smash hit, leading Marvel to pump the brakes on a sequel. Not only that, but issues between Marvel and Universal, who own the Hulk's distribution rights, further hindered efforts to produce another Hulk movie. However, reports have suggested that Marvel has reacquired the distribution rights to the character, opening the door to a future Hulk standalone film starring Mark Ruffalo as the Green Monster. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't...
Dude, that's what we are all waiting on. And I feel like, I mean, they showed the leader in Brave New World. So, I mean, maybe that's a setup, and maybe, like, since we may potentially be getting the Hulk in Spider-Man Brand New Day, maybe the Hulk is going to get his own movie after that. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, but I'm ready to see the Hulk actually be the Hulk in a movie.